Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now today we're going to tackle the Stormcast Eternals, but quickly. Because I've done these guys before, I thought it would be interesting, seeing as how some of you have expressed an interest in speed painting, how can I do this faster and easier? Well, here's one way that you can get a pretty good result, I think, for your Stormcast, particularly if you're doing something which has a very simple set of colours to use. Now I've used one shade over the whole thing, and I'll let you guess what it is. If you know me, you know what I'm up to here. But the actual finish is pretty simple. It's not pushing the boat out terribly far, there's not a lot of complicated highlighting, and because of the shape of these Stormcast, the actual highlights that you might want to add are very simple. Nice big visible areas of colour. So all of the colours are going to be linked in the description below. You'll be able to see what I'm using. I'll pop on the recipe for the base this time down there as well. But without any further mucking around, let's get cracking. Now I've begun by giving this fella a prime of Retributor Armor Spray, because why wouldn't you? He's going to be predominantly gold, so it'll save you a lot of time if you can pick up, something that's going to be the right colour to base him with. So speaking of bases, I've got here a little Retributor armor from the pot. And what I'm going to do is just quickly go over some of these larger areas of gold, just to make sure that they are the right sort of colour. Now obviously we have sprayed them gold, but you can find sometimes that the finish on the spray will be slightly different to what you'll get out of the pot, and if we need to fix up any little mistakes or what have you later out of the pot like that, then we want these colours to match. So I've got myself my large base brush. I love these things. And I'm just going to go quickly round. This does not take long at all. Now once you finish that, you might notice, even on the camera, a slight difference between those two areas of gold. The shield and the area around the top here is kind of a giveaway. Now I've got here a little McCrag blue, just a little bit of water in my brush to make sure that that's going to flow smoothly when I'm applying it. That might be a little too much water actually. What we'll do now is all the blue areas. So you want to just avoid the gold, but anywhere that's going to be silver or white later, don't worry too much. You see on the shield boss here, I'm being a little messy. But just take your time now and fill in all of these blue areas. You may find, particularly with some of the larger flat areas like this, that you're going to need to come back and do another coat over the top just to clear up some of these little streaky bits there. And don't forget, as I often do, the back of his tabard. This little bit here, I cannot tell you the number of times I've forgotten they have this bleeding thing. Now as a quick note, on the back of the shield here, sometimes this is painted blue, but for the purposes of our sort of speed paint, as long as it is primed, it's not going to matter. They always face your opponent like this, so don't worry about the back of the shield. Now once you've got that out of the way, it's on to the black. Now you can use a Baden black here quite happily. If you can get your hands on it though, I do recommend using the Vallejo flat black because you get slightly better coverage out of it, I think. Now we're going to do this before the silver because there are a few silver details that are actually on top of the black. So it's much easier to paint this now and then do those little silver bits later. So we'll get in here, the back of his little sword doubler, any leather bits, the joints in his armor, all these little bits. Just cruise around now and let's fill in these parts in his armor. Then we can move on to all of the metal areas. And for this I've got some lead belcher. As always, just adding a little water and then away we go. Now a quick note on this, I am also going to paint in all of the white areas with silver as well. And the reason for this is twofold. First of all, because we are looking for a way to do this really very quickly, if you can cut out colors that are not going to massively impact the final finish of the miniature, then the white is kind of a good one to go for because it is very crisp and it looks cool when it's done, but it's a good spot to save some time. So for example, on the shield boss here, ordinarily most of this would be white, but I'm just going to get in and hit it with some silver because it goes on a little quicker, I find. Now if you do want to paint this white, you want to take the time and make it look right, then a little bit of Celestial Grey in this step is where you want to go to. Now particularly on the shield boss, you have any little whoops moments, don't worry. You can go back, bring out your McCrag blue again, and fix them up. But for now, everywhere that's going to be metal, away you go. And now with all of those areas painted, we're going to use some Rakarth flesh. We'll paint in any scroll work he's got going. Now you may find, if you're doing secateurs for example, that instead of this, you might want to use Xandri Dust, which is a similar but slightly more sort of yellowy colour, and then you can use Rakarth flesh on the robes. But that's much of a much really, that's up to you to decide. Now I'm taking my time here because I don't want to try and, I want to save myself any cleanup time later. There are a couple of bits on the shield that I need to touch up, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. It's always quickest if you leave all of your little tidy up stages to the last, I find. And then the last of our base colours, which is Screamer Pink, we're going to paint in his weapon handles. Now, it's worth pointing out, if you want to save some more time, and you want to save a paint colour, you can just paint these in black. But I tend to think that a little bit of extra colour will work quite well for these. So take your time and just fill those in now too. Alright, now there is our hero of Sigmar, bright and shiny and clean, and I've touched up a couple of areas on his shield, so we're looking pretty good. Now it's time for his shade, and I've got Agrax Earthshade here, I've given it a really good shake, and I've got one of my little cheap brushes, because I want something bigger than a shade brush, but not as big as the large shade brush, so go figure. All you gotta do, load up your brush, we're not pushing the boat out particularly far with this, and then start working it all over the miniature, even the blue, even the purple. Just take your time and make sure that you are getting it into all of the recesses on here too. You want to make sure that all of your shading is actually happening properly. So let's get into that. And once you've shaded the whole miniature, you want to give them about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes to dry properly. Now with that shade dried, this is what we've got. And I actually think he's pretty cool. I wasn't sure at first when I first saw this kind of darker, almost brassy gold, whether or not I liked it, but it's really grown on me, particularly with some of the new lore indicating a more kind of grimdark, Stormcast Eternals. They aren't just the shiny guys of Sigmar anymore. Now, ordinarily I'd be looking for a way that we could dry brush this to highlight it, but unfortunately just because we have done so much on the rest of the miniature, getting to the gold and only the gold would prove a little bit challenging for that. So we're going to highlight with edge highlighting. And that's actually not anywhere near as scary as it sounds. I've still got my medium layer brush, just a little bit of water in some Liberated Gold. You don't need to go crazy with this, just a couple of areas. So along those big chest plates, along any real big hard edges. You do not have to highlight everything to get a really cool effect here. So really prominent areas, long knee pads, and where else? Now speaking of where else, here's a way that you can edge highlight some areas with a slightly more simple technique. Instead of using the very point of your brush, we're going to turn it sideways and use the edge. So along the edge of his shoulder plate here, you see I'm actually using the edge rather than the tip. I'll use the tip for that bit there. But we get that nice edge highlight without having to worry too much about losing control. You can do this on a lot of areas on the Stormcast. I don't want to go crazy like I mentioned for highlights, just a few really prominent areas. Now we're going to do the same thing again with a little bit of silver. Now I'm using Ironbreaker here because I want some contrast, but I don't want it to be crazy bright. If I do that, I think it's going to spoil the sort of darker look that we've got going. So same as, in some of these areas you can use the edge of your brush to pick out some of these details. I think the shield boss is a pretty good spot for this. So carefully down the center. You might not even see that on the camera. But areas like the edge of his hammer, for example, this is a good spot to just fleck that with the edge of your brush. And any other areas, particularly these little spots on his, now what are these called? Pterodactyls. these little hanging leather bits. Just dot in those nails there too, and any other areas you want to shine a bit more. There we go, there's that silver touched in. Now if you did want to do these areas that were going to be white with Celestra Grey, to highlight them now with a little bit of Ulthuan Grey, using the same techniques we already have. So I'm going to pop a base on this guy really quickly, and let's see what we get. And there we have it, our Stormcast Eternal is complete. Just very simple base, couple of tufts, and away we go. I really like how these guys look once they're done like this. And we've kind of hit the limit of what I would call fast, between that 25 and 30 minute mark of total work time. But there is one more thing I want to show you. So I've got Altdorf Guard Blue, because if there's one last area that I think does benefit from a little highlighting, it is going to be the blue. It's quite a prominent part of the miniature after all. So just a little bit of water as per usual. We're just going to get the very edges of the shield there, some of these leather details, anywhere that you want to just bring this up a little bit. Just add a bit of Altdorf Guard Blue as that last step. And we'll see how that looks when it's properly finished. And at last, finished. Now it's a little bit subtle on camera, but I promise that in reality that blue is there. So hopefully guys, something there was interesting to you. I'm quite a fan of this technique for getting stuff on the table very quickly, and because it's all fairly simple, we're using a single all-over shade, it's an easy way to get, as I say, an easy win for anybody who's just getting started, or if you really just want to do things the easy way. He does not look massively different to a, let's say, you know, with all of the bells and whistles style kind of Stormcast, so I like that result. So as always, feel free, you can drop a comment in the box below. My Twitter and Facebook are both linked there too. Say hi, and enjoy the rest of your day.